think we're live. Okay. Hi, we're live? Yes. All right. This is Tzvi Freeman, me. This is Rabbi of Liadi, otherwise known as the Balatanya or the Alter Rebbe. And this is a shofar. I'm sorry I couldn't get a picture of the Baal Shem Tov because, well, we don't have a picture of the Baal Shem Tov. There's a picture that's commonly used for the Baal Shem Tov, but it turns out it's actually the Baal Shem of London. Because we don't have a picture. Okay, but we do have the Alter Rebbe. We have the shofar. It's Elul, and it's the 18th of Elul. Chai Elul. Chai Elul, the life of Elul, the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov, of Rabbi Zalman of Liadi. Also happens to be the yahrzeit of the Maharal of Prague. A very special day. And so we're all together here, and we're going to go through this Teachers of the Hidden Wisdom. Who gave permission to reveal the secrets of millennia? So we're going to talk about secrets, hidden wisdom, and this outrageous act of us going and publicizing all these things and teaching them openly. Why is it that things that were hidden for so many thousands of years now are being made accessible on places like the internet or online classes and so on? Okay. Now we'll get to it. You'll see on your page there where you're watching me, I suppose, if you're watching me from the JNet page at Chabad.org, Jewish TV, you'll see there that there's no chat box. Technical problems at the last minute that there's no chat box. But first of all, we'll have it back next time. And we hope to have many this year, since it's a year of Hakel, of assembly, getting Jews together. So we'll have that chat box there next time. But in the meantime, at the very bottom of the page, there's join the discussion, add your comment. You can send that in, and your comments will be sent to me, and I'll see them in the questions. So whatever questions you have, you can just type them in down there and just shoot them off, and they'll come to me, and I'll discuss those. I really look forward to questions, comments, and discussion, because that's the only way I really know that there's anybody out there. I feel I'm talking to somebody. It makes it much more live. So again, you get to chabad.org/304531. You can get to it from the home page, and you'll see everything you need over there to follow along. There's me talking. And then under that, there is the text from the as a PDF from JNet, or you can click the link and where it says click here for the follow along text and follow it inside on a different page where it's been a little more edited and it has some nice pictures. Maybe you like pictures. Okay, let's get started. Start with dawn and sunrise. That's our connection with Chai Elul. The Baal Shem Tov is dawn, and Rabbi Zalman of Liadi, let me just call him the Alter Rebbe, that's how we call him in short in general. He's sunrise. How does that work out? Well, it says in the Psalms and Tehillim that to God, 1,000 years is like a day. And it also, the rabbis tell us that there are 6,000 years, 6 millennium to the history of the world. So we take each of those 6 millennium and we line it up with a day, like the 6 days of creation, which puts us right now being in the year 5,776. That's the 6th millennia. That means we're on Friday. And a millennia has a day, has a midnight, it has the middle of the night, it has the 3 watches of the night, including the morning watch. It has dawn, sunrise, it has noon. We're afternoon already, a little bit afternoon. I have another article on that, which you might find interesting. The link is there at the bottom of the page where the article is. But there's an article you can look for the last day of history. You can find that at Chabad.org, which goes through and lines up each of those periods. What happened at midnight? Midnight happens to be Well, we can work it out. The 6 millennia, the year 5000, would begin in the secular date of 1239. Or 12, that would be the full of 1239, so really 1240. So it comes out that midnight would be 1490. So 1492, the expulsion from Spain and the discovery of America happens to have happened at midnight. Now, work out a little more math. So dawn, we'll say, is halfway through the day. So that would be the year 5500. What happened in 5500? Well, it turns out that's the year that the Baal Shem Tov settled in the town of Mezhebush. We actually have the town records to show that he was on the payroll of the town as the Maggid for the Jews. We call him Maggid, the pastor, the darshan, somebody will remind me of the word in English. So he arrived there at that time. Actually, he became the leader of the hidden tzaddikim, this hidden group, 4 years earlier. And then, but it wasn't until he moved to Mezhebush that his name spread throughout and people started coming there. It was obvious that he had realized that this must be the time that Mashiach is coming. In fact, the Or HaChaim, Rabbi Chaim Attar from Morocco, had also decided the same thing. And he set on his path to get to the land of Israel by the year 1740, 5500. And the Baal Shem Tov, a year or two after he settled in Mezhebush, set off also to meet the Or HaChaim in Israel. And the idea was that together they would bring Mashiach. But the Or HaChaim didn't live through that year, and the Baal Shem Tov never made it. But they both understood that that time in the secular calendar, 1740 or 5500, that year was dawn, and so it was a great time for Mashiach to come. Since then, every day is a great day for Mashiach to come. I guess it always was, but especially now, he is very late, so he should come. We should be there already. So that's dawn. Now, the way the Jewish day works is dawn is not when the sun rises, it's when it starts getting light outside. If you look outside long before the sun rises, there's already some light. You start being able to recognize the trees, the background, and so on. And then slowly you can start recognizing some of the colors, the color blue, and then other colors, until finally you can see everything. That's when the sun comes up. It takes generally 72 minutes. That's how we work it out. 72 minutes from dawn until the sun comes up. And the sun to actually rise takes about 4 minutes from the time the top of the sun comes over the horizon until the entire sun has come up. You can time it. So 72 minutes, if you reduce that to in a ratio out of 1,000 years, turns out to be about 50 years. 50 years after 1740 would then be 1790, or actually the fall of 1789. And knowing a little history, you realize, well, that's the French Revolution. That's the beginning of the modern era. And that's when the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya, was writing his little book called Sefer HaTanya, which he didn't call it Tanya, he called it Sefer Shel Beinanim, the book for the everyman, a populist book, a book to show how every person could serve God with love and with joy and with awe, which is what the Baal Shem Tov was teaching, what the Baal Shem Tov introduced into the world. But the Alter Rebbe put it into a book for everybody, made it much more accessible. So that's sunrise. We're going to discuss what's the difference between dawn and sunrise, and we'll get an idea from that what's the difference between the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. Okay, so to do this, we'll look at two stories, very fascinating stories. One story that has to do with the Baal Shem Tov, and the other that has to do with the Alter Rebbe. But they're really both told by the Alter Rebbe. It's interesting. Okay, the first story happens when the Alter Rebbe was a student of the Maggid of Mizrich. The Maggid of Mizrich was a student of the Baal Shem Tov. When the Baal Shem Tov passed away, after a year, the Maggid became the heir of the Baal Shem Tov and continued the teachings, this school, these teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. He gathered around him in Mezrich some very great tzaddikim, great scholars, well-known names like Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, Rabbi Elimelech of Lezinsk, the Rav Zusha ben Apoli, and others very well-known. And he trained them, and then he sent them off to their respective places throughout Eastern Europe, where they became the leaders in those areas, and they created a whole network of the Hasidim throughout Europe. The hardest places for the Hasidim were in the northeast, in Lithuania and Belarus, present-day Belarus. That happened to be where the Alter Rebbe was from, and where he was sent back to. And that's where the brunt of the opposition to Hasidus, the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, was. The Alter Rebbe, though, had a very beautiful pen, could write magnificently, and keen sense of metaphor. It was with very great hardship, but he pushed for the teaching of Hasidus to be spread, even in that area, in the most difficult areas. And he ended up in jail twice, in prison twice. And we'll get to that as well. What were the reasons behind that? But first of all, let's go when he was back as a student to the Maggid of Mizrich. And one day, a colleague of the Maggid, who had studied together with the Maggid from the Baal Shem Tov, came to visit. Pinchas Kortzer. Pinchas came, and he disagreed somewhat with the Maggid. The Maggid was teaching all of these things and telling the students to teach them openly. And Reb Pinchas felt that these were teachings only for certain people. The Baal Shem Tov had told these teachings dressed up in stories. He told the simple people. And to his inner circle, he told them the real meaning of these stories. But he didn't tell them to spread them openly. The Maggid was now spreading this much more openly. But Pinchas had found that day, blowing around in the courtyard, 2 sheets of paper, and picked them up and saw on the paper were written these very deep secrets that the Maggid had been teaching his students. They're written on paper. Anybody could have picked them up and read them. And he was very upset about this. Now, when a tzaddik gets upset about something, it's really dangerous. His upsetness goes higher and higher, and makes waves up above in the spheres above. So he was displaying openly his upsetness about this, and the Maggid was nowhere to be found. So who was there? Rabbi Shneur Zalman, the Alter Rebbe, who was the youngest of the students. Rabbi Lev Cohen, Rabbi Zusha Nepoli, they were there, and they were listening to him. So they couldn't quiet him down until the Alter Rebbe says, "Let me tell you a story." And he told them the story. I'll say it in short because you can read it inside, but I translated it exactly as it's found in the Hatamim, original source. So it's a story about like most of these Jewish stories, they're metaphors. A story about a mighty king who has a son. He sends the son off to a distant island because he says, look, he's smart, he's bright, he's a good kid, but he doesn't know reality. I mean, he doesn't know how to really deal with the world. How can he become a king? So he sends him off to a remote island in a distant land in his kingdom. And there he's going to learn, he says, wisdom and might. And it's strange, it says he's going to learn the nature of various plants and animals, to learn to hunt wild beasts and birds in dangerous places. Listen, I didn't make this. This is how he told it to him. And I suppose that my understanding of it is this is the story of how our own neshamas, our souls, are sent into this world and into a body to deal with the real world. And the point of coming here is to learn wisdom and might. To learn wisdom we can know God on our own, and might to do things on our own, to be proactive. It could also be the story of the exile, why all of us are exiled from our land, or most of us are exiled from our land today. The Jews have been in exile for so long, but I think it's principally just about this exile of the soul from its place above to be within a body over here. I'm going to remind you again, because I want to make sure you're there. At the bottom of the page, you can put in a comment and send it to me, and I'll see what your questions are and what people are saying about this. So the son is off there, and one day the news reaches the king that his son, the prince, his only son, is very ill. Very serious illness. They've sent doctors. The doctors can't find any cure. What are they going to do? So the king sends out an announcement, proclamation through the entire kingdom. If anybody knows a cure for this illness, come immediately. All the wise people are just like, I don't know what to say. We don't have anything. Until a certain man comes to the palace, and he says, I have a cure. The only thing is, for this cure, you need a certain rare stone, a rare gem. It's very precious, very hard to find. But if you find it, you grind it up, fine as sand, and then you mix it with good wine, and then you administer it to the prince. Guaranteed, he'll be cured. Okay, the king gets all the experts in stones, so find the stone. Looking, where are we going to find the stone? Okay, so look through, the king has a treasury full of rare gems. They look through all of that, and finally, hey, we found it. But where is it? It's the centerpiece stone of the king's royal crown. What are you going to do? Well, we have to tell the king. That's the only one there is. We have to go tell him. So they come, they tell the king, we found it, but the good news is we found it, but the bad news is it's right up there in your head, in the middle, that big, yeah, that's the one. King says, okay, take it out, grind it fine, mix it with the wine, and send to my son. So the princes are sitting there, all not the princes, like the nobility, high class, aristocracy, they're sitting there. It says, King, your honor, your lordship, don't you realize this is the king, the crown that you were crowned with when you first became king? I missed that one part. I always do that. At this point, just after he'd proclaimed, yeah, take it and grind it up, news came that the prince his situation had worsened. He was now so ill that he couldn't open his mouth. He couldn't pry his mouth open. So even if they would have the medicine, the remedy, how are they going to get it into his mouth? So the king hears this, and everybody says, okay, so that's it. He's going to have to give up. But the king says, no, take it, grind it up, and send it now. So now the nobility say to the king, your lordship, your majesty, we understand before when there was a possibility you could get it into your son's mouth, but now that his lips are tightly shut, what are you going to do? Is it worth it to grind up the stone? And who says there's any way it could help? So the king says, quote his words over here, he says, if heaven forbid, my son does not live, what is the worth of my crown? And if my son is healed, then this will be the crown's most magnificent glory, that my only son, who endangered his life to fulfill my command and rise in wisdom and might through great ordeals until he became deathly ill, with this crown jewel, he was healed. So that's the story that he told Rabbi Pinchas. And Rabbi Pinchas clapped his hands, he laughed, he says, oh, you're right. You provided a justification for the practice of your teacher to teach in the secrets of Torah openly. How fortunate is the teacher who has such students. So thinking about it, so what's this crown jewel? What is it? By the way, the story goes on that the Maggid was asleep at the time. And when he awoke, he called his students and he asked them, what happened when I was asleep? And they all looked to Rabbi Shneur Zalman, and he told the whole story in short. And the Maggid says, "You saved me. You saved me because in my sleep I saw that there was a huge accusation against me up in heavens, against me and against the teachings of my master, the Baal Shem Tov. But I saw that you were standing there, up in heaven, you were standing there. You were pleading on my behalf, and you justified my actions, and your words were accepted, and you brought merit to my teachings and to the teachings of my master, the Baal Shem Tov." Okay, so there's meaning to every detail of the story of the prince being on a distant island, which explained, and it was becoming ill and more ill and more ill until his lips can't even open. And to this idea of grinding the crown jewel, the centerpiece of the crown, grinding it and mixing it with fine wine and giving it to the prince. So what does it all mean? So we'll get to what it all means. And I'm still waiting for some questions to come in over here. I haven't seen any come in yet. No. Okay, we're waiting. Okay. So we'll go back in the meantime. Now, okay, so the next story. So, like I said, under the Maggid's guidance, the Alter Rebbe, Rebbe Shneur Zalman, went back to Belarus, which was then Lithuania, and then it became annexed as part of Russia by Katerina, the Tsar. And by 1789, he was writing this little book called Tanya to popularize this even more. There was tremendous opposition, a lot of difficulty. And now, keep in mind, there's a revolution going on in France in the Reign of Terror, and royal heads rolling the streets. The Tsar of Russia is not too happy about anything that might look like revolution. And what do you know? They're at war. Russia's at war with the Ottoman Empire, and the Alter Rebbe is raising funds to send to the Yishuv, the settlement in Israel, which was in Palestine under the Ottoman Empire. So accusations were made that he was assisting the enemy. Accusations were made that he was starting a populist revolt. He was making himself a leader, and that the entire Hasidic movement was really a popular revolt against the monarchy. And several were arrested, but he was considered to be the leader. And he was arrested and taken to the capital, which was, I think, Petersburg, and put in a prison cell in the fortress, taken for interrogation. He was there for 53 days under interrogation, which is interesting that it was 53 days because there are 53 chapters to the first book of Tanya. Okay, so he's there. While he's there, he received a visit from the Maggid of Mezrich, and somebody who he didn't recognize but realized was the Baal Shem Tov. They had come from their place in Gan Eden above, and they'd come into physical bodies in order to come and visit their student there in the prison cell. So they told him many things. They told him what questions he's going to be asked, and they told him what he should answer to each question. They even told him the last question he would be asking that he should just smile and not answer it. But that's a whole other story. But he understood that if he's in prison over here, it's not just, an accident, somebody accused him and that's it. No, whatever happens down in this world is a reflection of something happening up there. So there must be something that happened up there, some accusation against him that requires that he be sitting in prison. So he asked what it was. What did he do wrong? And they said to him, well, you were teaching these secrets of the inner Torah very openly. You were spreading them, disseminating them so far and wide, and the way you were teaching them. So he said, well, should I stop? They said, no, you're going to be released from here, And when you were released, it will be because you won not just in the court here, but in the court above. And therefore, you should spread the teachings even more, which is what he did. When he was released, he started teaching in a whole new fashion. To say before, when he would teach, it was like fire, and people standing there would be shivering and shaking. And his teachings were fairly short in comparison to when he came out of prison. His teachings were much longer. They were more, we say in Hebrew, miyushav, settled. People were able to stand there and listen and absorb what he was teaching. And he went into the fine details much more. He brought it, in other words, much more into human intellect, even more than he had done before. And all this came as a result of the imprisonment. Okay, so here's the question that comes here. The accusation had already happened before, that the Maggid was spreading these teachings too far and wide, and the whole story to win. Now again, another accusation. You're spreading too far. And this time, the Alter Rebbe says, well, maybe I should stop. Should I continue? Maybe I was doing the wrong thing. Why? He was the one who justified it to begin with. What's happening different now that he needs a justification? Again, and his first justification doesn't work. What's different now? What changed? I'm going to ask Chai, are there any questions from the way? Okay. If there are, remember that's there at the bottom of the page of your Chabad.org. Just send them in. Okay, and I think once we understand what maybe there were questions, but the person who was supposed to send it to us didn't send it. Okay, we'll get them soon. Don't worry. I'm going to check myself. 1 second. We'll see. I'm sorry, just 1 second. I have some questions here. Okay. So here are a few interesting notes. Okay. From Southern Ohio, we got an interesting question. Oh, it's not a question, it's a comment. Chamil is saying, the lesson is maybe the search. It took the efforts of all the subjects and then for their king to get them to accept that its use wasn't its place in the king's crown, but as a cure. Oh, so this is a very interesting idea. Chamil is saying that maybe the point is over here, the point of the story is to tell you that the crown jewel is not there to be a crown jewel in the king, in the king's crown. The crown jewel is there for the sake of the prince. The king is not there for the sake of the crown. The crown is there for the sake of the king. Okay, yeah, hi, I got it, thank you. I'm seeing them now in front of me. So that would be as to say that not only you could understand the relationship of Jews and Torah in two different ways. You can understand that Jews are here to keep the Torah, or you could understand that the Torah is here to bring out the quality of the Jewish people. Which one is it? And especially when we're talking about the secrets of the Torah, and that would be the crown jewel. So are the Jewish people here so they can eventually understand these great secrets, or are these great secrets there for the sake of bringing out healing and bringing out something in the Jewish people? And that's a very old question. It's asked in a medrash called Tanin Devi Eliyahu, which according to some traditions was composed by Rabbi Eliezer. No, that was not by Rabbi Eliezer. maybe Rabbi Akiva. Anyways, Tanya to the Eliyahu, there it says that I don't know which came first, the Torah or the Jewish people. Which meaning not just which came first chronologically, but which one is for the sake of which. And Eliyahu answers, well, the Torah is special, the Torah is dear, because it's like a wise sage who lives in the palace, and he's a consultant to the king, an advisor to the king. But the king loves this advisor especially because he teaches the children of the king to go in a proper path and be good. And so therefore that's why he's most beloved. So why is the Torah so beloved? Because it brings out the quality of the children. And then he also points out that I don't know which came first, but when the Torah itself says which came first, the Torah says that this is what you should say to the Jewish people. That God says to Moses, say this to the Jewish people. In other words, the entire Torah is there to be spoken to the Jewish people. So the Jewish people, the Torah assumes the existence of the Jewish people. So I think that's what Yerachmiel is saying, that the point was to say that even the crown jewel is there for the sake of the prince. Yes, that's important. Okay. Other people are writing that they will send in comments, and they've read this before. They read the article already. Okay, so we'll get to those questions soon. And Chai will keep on sending me if there's any more questions. Great. Back to the story. So we want to know, why was the original argument in the original parable no longer effective? What changed? To do that, let's go back to what was behind Rav Pinchas of Koretz, was a very great teacher, very great Rebbe, great tzaddik. What was his dispute with the Maggid all about? Simple question. This is what he had heard from his teacher. The Maggid was simply teaching that which he had heard from the Baal Shem Tov, except he was expanding upon it and elucidating further and providing even greater metaphor. The Maggid was a very great Kabbalist and a great master of metaphor. So why shouldn't Rav Pinchas, of course, want his teacher's teachings to be spread even further? Okay, because these were secrets. Well, what are secrets all about? Why keep them secret? So because you don't want other people to know, and generally you keep secrets because you want to retain power. That's not what Torah is all about. Torah is to be spread out to everybody. Everybody's supposed to be there. Everybody was at Mount Sinai and heard Hashem speaking, God speaking to everybody. That's what Torah is all about. It's for the people. Everything is for the people. Unlike in Egypt, where it's just ancient Egypt, just the Khartoum Pharaoh, the researchers knew the truth, and what they printed in the journals was for the populace. Okay, no, Torah is not like that. Torah, everybody gets to learn everything. So what's the secrets in Torah? So the Talmud in Chagiga explains that no, there are certain things that can only be taught to certain people under certain conditions, one-on-one, and you have to know who it is that you're teaching it to. So here, the Rambam, Maimonides, summarizes everything. He says that it can only be explained to one individual at a time. It has to be a wise person who can reach understanding with his own mind. Mevin midato. He understands on his own. In other words, like Rav Moshe Cordovero explains it, he gets it already. When you tell him, he says, oh, I know what you're talking about. So you only have to tell him just a little bit. And you must only tell him just a little bit, because if you say too much, the point will be lost. But with that little bit, he's able to say, oh, it means this and this and this and this and this. And he gets the whole thing. So the one who gets it is the one who's already got it. And you recognize in him that he's already got it, so you can give it to him. So, and once he gets it and he hears it, he thinks about it deeply and more deeply, and he knows how to contemplate very, very deeply, and to visualize and get it. And he understands why it can't be taught to anybody else. So that's why they have to be kept under your tongue, beneath your garments, not spread out to everybody. So we find an interesting thing, actually, in Jewish literature. When you look at the literature amongst and other cultures, you'll see that they have their sacred works are very mystical works. And you find written laws and so on, but much more of this mystical stuff. In Jewish teachings, okay, a lot was lost because we were in exile for so long and much was destroyed. But most of the written work is popular works like Tanakh and Mishnah and Talmud and so on. That's what we find. Of written works, until a few hundred years ago, of written works, very few were of mystical import. So it's very easily explained why. Because Jewish society was always a literate society. Other societies, very few were literate. So in another society, if you wanted to spread a secret, how did you spread it? You wrote it down. The only ones who could read it were those who it was meant for. In Jewish society, most people were expected to be able to read and write. So you wrote down stuff for everybody. But secrets, you could only transmit orally. If you did write them down, you had to write them down as riddles. Or as the Rambam himself explains, you write something that can be understood and taken and has plenty of meaning, understood superficially. But somebody who understands much more deeply see that there are very deep secrets in here, which is the entirety of Tanakh, of all Jewish literature. There's a certain level there, which is very deep, that an understanding person comes to understand, or it can be taught by his teacher and see it. Now, the Rambam says that specifically about the book of Job, but then he says it applies to everything in Torah. Okay, so those are the secrets, and that's the reason why it should only be taught to certain people, not in order to retain power, but because if you teach it to other people, they're not going to get it. Well, that's not so bad that they're not going to get it, so they won't get it. No, but they'll think that they did get it. Then they'll think that they do understand it. Now, there's a lot of problems with a person thinking that he got it when he didn't. First of all, what he does think he have is a lie. It's not true. And he's going to think this is Torah. So he's going to be teaching things and saying that to others and saying that it's Torah when it's not Torah because he got it all wrong. Secondly, many of these ideas, because they're enclosed within a parable, a metaphor, what you'll do is called taking the shell and throwing away the fruit. You take the metaphor, you take the parable and think that's the reality. For example, there are 10 sfirot, Chochmah, Bina, and so on. So you might imagine there's these 10 spheres up there in the sky somewhere, and that's what they're all about. And even if not that, other things you might take very literally. You don't know how to strip away the shell and get to the juice inside. And even greater danger is that, well, if I were teaching you secrets of baseball or even secrets of mathematics, okay, so I know the secrets of baseball, the secrets of mathematics. If I tell you I'm teaching you the secrets of divine wisdom, I know the secrets of divine wisdom. There's nothing that could inflate the ego more than somebody priding himself, I know the secrets of divine wisdom. A person who really gets it, who really understands it, understands that he does not understand. Like we have a saying, they trace it back to Rabbi Yedidia Bedersi. Rabbi Yedidia Bedersi said, the ultimate knowledge is that you don't know. So somebody who knows that he doesn't know. Somebody who doesn't know thinks that he knows and thinks, what do I know? Divine wisdom. Wow. That's very dangerous, very dangerous. We'll get to more of that soon. So, nevertheless, we see Rabbi Chaim Vital writing in his introduction to the Eitz Chaim that his teacher, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, the Arizal, we're talking in the 16th century, that his teacher said that now is the time we have to publicize, not only permissible, it's a mitzvah to reveal these teachings. And at that time, these teachings started spreading very rapidly first from Israel to they arrived in Europe. They spread throughout Europe very rapidly. Got to a point when in the 16th, 17th century, everywhere in Europe, every balabas, every regular Jew wanted to hear Kabbalah, wanted to learn Kabbalah books, and it was being spread everywhere. If you gave a talk in shul, you had to include Kabbalah. That's the way it was. It spread amongst Jews, it spread amongst non-Jews, everywhere. The Kabbalah, whatever fad? No, it wouldn't be a fad. It spread, and it spread often to the wrong people who misunderstood it. People know the whole story with Sabtai Tzvi, Jacob Frank, and others who abused these teachings, and others completely misunderstood them. And it was often disastrous. Okay, so there's two questions now. These are our basic questions, really. If it was forbidden all along, why now did it become permissible? And if it is now permissible, so why is there again a decree against spreading it out? Okay, so why should it be permissible to spread these secrets? Well, the answer is, like we said before, Torah is for everybody. Torah Tzvi lanu Moshe Morasha Kehilas Yaakov. The Torah that Moses commanded us is an inheritance for the entire Jewish people. That's what you teach a child. It says in the Gemara, as soon as a child begins to speak, the first things you teach him are Shema Yisrael and Torah Tzvi lanu. You teach a child that all of Torah belongs to you. And it is a halacha in Torah, in the laws of Torah study, that a Jew has to be fluent in the entire Torah. You can't know part of Torah that you can leave out. And that includes the secrets of Torah. That belongs to you, so it has to be learned. Okay. But on the other hand, if you learn them without guidance, they'll get messed up. But that's not a problem in the Torah. It belongs to you. You're supposed to learn it. It's just that you're not able to approach it. The problem's not in the object of study. It's in the subject, the one who is studying it, the person. Actually, that applies to any part of Torah. It is an entire discussion in the laws of Torah study. The Rambam discusses it, discussed in Shulchan Aruch. The Alter Rebbe discusses it himself at length. Are you allowed to teach Torah to a student who is not worthy? Say, for example, a student who is not keeping kosher, not living a proper lifestyle, upright lifestyle, and so on. He says, I want to learn Torah. Are you allowed to teach Torah to him? So there's many reasons why not. And in fact, the rabbis say that Torah is compared to a potion. What type of a potion? Well, that depends. If a person merits, it's a potion of life. If he doesn't merit, it's a poison. God forbid. It poisons the person. How's it poison the person? The same thing we were discussing before. He becomes full of his own ego. I know Torah, I know this, and he just uses it to argue with people, put other people down, use it against you, against himself. The Torah that was supposed to bring him closer to God can take him further away until he gets to, God forbid, the point of no return because he's so full of his own ego and how great he is and so on. You can't talk to him. So any part of Torah can be dangerous. The only thing is, so when it comes to the revealed parts of Torah, we say, no, you can teach it to him anyways, because eventually there's hope, he'll get it right. And he has to know these things. He has to know in order to know what he's supposed to do. But the inner Torah, we say, no, it's too dangerous. We'll wait till another lifetime for him to learn it. Right now, he can't. Let me just check again if some questions have come in. And I'll see over here. Maybe it's just not showing up, but I'm not seeing them there. So I'll wait some more. Please send me some questions. Yeah. Okay, I'll go back. Okay. So we said the inner Torah, nevertheless, you're going to teach. And eventually, the innermost secrets of the Torah will be revealed to everybody, and everybody will be learning them. And that's the quotation from the very end of the Mishnah Torah of the Rambam, the very last halacha that the Rambam tells us. He says, and this talks about the times of Mashiach, and people think about the times of Mashiach, oh, that's a time of peace, there's been no war, and be candies growing from trees. That's not what it's about. Okay, that'll be true, but the real point is, he says, in that era there will be neither famine nor war, envy or competition, for good will flow in abundance, all the delights will be freely available as dust. But why? Because the occupation of the entire world will be solely to know God. Therefore the Jews will be great sages and know the hidden matters, grasping the knowledge of the Creator according to the full extent of human potential. As it says, the world will be filled with the knowledge of God as the waters cover the ocean bed. As the Rambam says, the entire world, like all human beings, their entire occupation will be to know God. And the Jews will be the sages, because we're supposed to be the priestly ones who are teaching this because we were introduced to it, okay? But the point is that everybody should be knowing this. So these things that are hidden matters will then become, this is a beautiful picture I found, of the ocean covering the ocean bed. The world will be filled with the knowledge of God as the waters cover the ocean bed. What is the ocean? It is the waters that cover it. What will the world be? The world will be then this knowledge of God. That's what it'll be all about. Okay, so there won't be any restrictions then. This is the same Rambam who told us all the restrictions why you can't teach Jews, but at a certain point, he says we'll be able, it'll flow, everybody be able to understand it. Why? Because you won't be all concerned with matters of this world. Your mind will free be a calm, serene world, and people's minds will be in a state where they'll be able to absorb these things. Fantastic. Okay, that's then when Mashiach comes. What about now? Mashiach's not yet here. We're not in the times of Mashiach. Take a look. You can look in your WhatsApp or Facebook and see the pictures that are posted. We can see it's not yet Messianic times. Or you can look at your credit card bill. Wherever you want to look, you can see. Okay, so why are we learning in these times when our minds are not open enough? We don't have that serenity, and yet we're being taught this hidden wisdom. So there's two answers. First of all, it's an exigency, it's the needs of the time. If you look at the introduction to the Rambam wrote the Mor Nevuchim, the Guide for the Perplexed, and he says there that he's teaching hidden matters. Many people learn the Mor Nevuchim according to Kabbalah, that you can understand everything in Mor Nevuchim according to Kabbalah. And they say it's a book of philosophy, where an amazing book where all streams of philosophy of the time come together, Greek with Arabic, with European, with Judaic, all these streams of philosophy come together in one book. And so much of Arabic philosophy is preserved by the Rambam in the Mor Nevuchim. But others say that no, he was using that just as a means to convey Torah ideas, the hidden matters of Torah, through the medium of philosophy. But really, and that's what he says in his introduction, these are hidden matters, Torah hidden matters. So what gives him the right to reveal these hidden matters in a book and then allow it to be, he wrote it in Arabic so that most Jews at the time read Arabic, and then allowed it to be translated into Hebrew for those who didn't understand Arabic. So he says he was pressed to, because so many Jews have become confused from reading all these philosophy books, and they're confused, they lost their path, so he has to do this. And the Rambam has a precedent, a very major precedent. So originally, the only thing that was allowed to be in writing as books were the 24 books of Tanakh. And nothing else. All the rest of Torah was transmitted exclusively as an oral tradition. And things that are in writing, you were not allowed to learn by heart, except for certain things that everybody knew by heart, like Shema Yisrael or Hazinu. And things that are transmitted orally, you were not allowed to put in writing. Then at a certain point, the Gemara says, in Gittin, people were writing things down and keeping books. writing them down. And Rabbi Akiva started collecting, Rabbi Meir continued, and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Rabbi Judah the prince, composed the Mishnah, compiled everything to the Mishnah. It's now written down. How are you allowed to write it down? You're not supposed to write it down. So, first of all, it's very interesting. Why couldn't you write it down to begin with? Different reasons given. The Maharsha says that you couldn't write it down because you needed to learn it from a teacher. And if it would be written down, you wouldn't have that experience of learning it from a teacher. Now, in other words, like Torah law, you read the written Torah, this is what it says, you do it like this, you do it like that. Now a teacher comes and tells you, yeah, that's what it sounds like to you. But the way we actually practice it, it's like this and like that. And you can see, if you look into the words a little more carefully, you can see that that's really what it means. And I'll show you how. And you receive a certain sense of how to learn, how to think in a Torah way from a teacher that you don't get when you learn just from a book. You learn how to think, how to approach it. The Maharal says something yet more interesting. He says that once you've written it down, it's no longer the oral tradition. He says like this, the written tradition means it's a certain set of, these are the words and this is it. It's finite. Oral tradition means a discussion. Not just it's passed down orally, but there's a discussion, there's a debate. We're using our minds to understand, and that goes on and on. It's very organic, very dynamic. And once it's written down, it's no longer that. Which means somebody pointed out to me, Rabbi Yisrael Rubin pointed out to me, that maybe when the Torah is written down on the internet, that doesn't happen to it. It doesn't become finite. It keeps on expanding and expanding, especially as a Google Doc, you can write comments on the comments. So maybe that's a better venue for it. Okay, that's a whole other issue. So the Torah wasn't supposed to be written down, and now Rabbi Yehuda he's writing it down. What's going on? They said, Eis la'asos l'Hashem heper Torah sacha. Literally, that means it's a time to do something for God. They have made void your Torah. They didn't make void. They didn't override any prohibition of the Torah. They just said, okay, what was the reason for transmitting it orally? To keep it alive. Well, now the situation is that Jews are spread all over. This is at the height of the Roman Empire, and there's Jews are spread in the Roman and the Persian empires, and they're about to collapse. And Jews are everywhere. If we don't write it down now, it will be lost. Jews are being persecuted everywhere, all sorts of problems. It's going to be lost. So now comes the time, for heaven's sake, to write it down, to preserve it. Before to preserve it, you transmitted it orally for the same reason, for preservation. Now you have to write it down. So the consistency of the time is what changes things. There's some questions, I'm going to get to them in a second. Okay, so now we're going to say the same thing applies when it comes to the hidden matters of Torah. There's a descent of the generations, just like the prince who gets ill from being in this far distant place, endangering his life. So our souls, from being in the world for so long, especially going into exile, we become ill, become desensitized to anything godly, anything divine. And all of our mitzvahs are losing life to them. Our learning Torah is losing life. We don't feel that closeness to God that we felt before. And God forbid, the soul could be totally lost here, totally covered up. Now comes a time to do something, for heaven's sake. What is it? Under such conditions, you got to take the centerpiece of the crown jewels, the inner light of the Torah, and that will awaken that will awaken the soul. So, like, there's a tradition that the reason the Baal Shem Tov's name was Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov. His name is Yisrael. And he came at the time that the Jewish people were in a state of a coma, because there's a tradition that when a person is in a faint, a coma, you go and whisper his name, his Jewish name, or her Jewish name into the ear, and the name is attached to the inner core of the person. So that inner core resonates and the person comes back awake. So Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov was, so to speak, God whispering our name, Yisrael, into our ears so that we would wake up. That's this crown jewel that touches, resonates with the core of the Jew. The innermost of the Torah resonates with the innermost of the Jew. And that's what happens when a person hears stories and teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. That's my soul speaking to me. It's like something that I knew all along, but I didn't know that I know it. But when I hear it, yeah, it resonates. That's right. Here's a question that came in. Still don't get the question. Don't get the question. Why is it now necessary? Okay, the question, why is it now necessary for the hidden part of the Torah to reveal, was because, well, before it was dangerous. You weren't allowed. And it's a halacha that you can't teach this. So now, why all of a sudden did it become permissible? That was the question. Yeah, and okay, somebody has another question. So it says, Jew has to be fluent in the entire Torah. Yeah, that's a long. So how is this possible? Well, when we say learn the entire Torah, yeah, the applications of Torah go on and on and on and on and on. Because you say, well, what do you do in this situation? What do you do in that situation? What do you do in this situation? But to know all of the halachas of Torah is not impossible. To know all the applications, you'll never know. To know all of the different ways of understanding it, that goes on and on and on. But to know basically what's there, that is possible. According to the Rambam, if you would learn the entire Tanakh and the Mishnah Torah, you would know the entire Torah. So we're talking about Torah as being the commentary on the mitzvahs. That's how the Rambam understands it. It's generally understood that Torah means a commentary on all the mitzvahs. What do you do, what don't you do, and the reasons behind that. You need to know the reasons behind that in order to make the application. The Rambam seems to believe that even without knowing the reasons behind it, as long as you know what the Tanakh and you have all of the halachas, you know the entire Torah. What to do in each situation, you'll need somebody who's able to figure that out for you. So that you are able to learn. Okay, now halachically, according to Yalkut Yosef, a Jew who doesn't keep the Shabbos, no. It's very often we come across the statement that a Jew who doesn't keep Shabbos is considered to be like a non-Jew. You have to understand that doesn't not to be taken literally. And it's quite clear that it's not taken literally, because if a person doesn't keep Shabbos, marries a Jewish person, it's a marriage. And if it's a woman who doesn't keep Shabbos, her children are Jewish. So it just means technically in certain situations, and so for certain matters, this person cannot be considered as a Jew. In other words, if they cook and say, well, I kept kosher, you can't trust that it's kosher because this person doesn't keep those mitzvahs. So it's not to be taken literally and applied everywhere. Okay. So anyways, the halacha is in the end that you are allowed to teach this person Torah, but you should be careful what you teach. You need to teach this person things that will inspire him or her to keep Torah. And if you start off with teaching the person difficult sections of Talmud or Tanakh and so on that raise many, many questions and no answers, or few answers, you're not going about it right. I think what you need to do is teach the person the things that will inspire the person the most, and bring resolutions to the difficulties that he or she has. You have to know with each person what to learn with that person, and what are the basics. Okay. And what, in your opinion, are the ramifications of all this in an era when it seems like many of the deepest secrets are being simplified by those who are not Jews? It seems like non-Jews are teaching Jews now simple musar and basic truths that we have forsaken. Okay. So there's two things I think that are in this question that need to be addressed. One is that there are people who think they understand these secrets and are teaching them and don't really understand them, and teaching them to people in a way that people think they understand and don't, and people think they can just scan the Zohar with their fingers and that sort of thing. Yeah, that's problematic. And that's just like when you grind up the crown jewel and you smear it over the prince's mouth, maybe a few drops will get in, so some of it is going to spill elsewhere. So like they say, it goes with the territory. It's a danger, but we have to take that risk that that's going to happen. The main thing is that those who know how to teach it properly have to spend more time and find more students to teach it properly. And the other basic, simple Muslim basic truths that we have forsaken, I don't know that Jews have forsaken them, but yes, it is definitely true that Jewish wisdom has spread throughout much of the world, and Jewish values have been spread to almost every part of the world, and they should be spread even further. And the Rambam himself says that other religions have taken truths of Judaism and spread them throughout the world, and this was the only way that it could happen in such a strange way. But still, to this day, Jews are looked upon for wisdom, and Chabad.org right now is the busiest faith-based website there is on the internet. I mean, busier than any faith-based site of any other religion, because people come to Jews for these basic truths still to this day. So they are being spread. Okay, it's getting late, so let's get to the point. The first reason why we're allowed to teach these secrets of the Torah today, and we couldn't before, is for medicinal properties. Brings Jews back awake. And that's the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. Take a little dropper, give it just exactly the amount. Okay, some of it's going to spread around because the lips are held tight. The person's not really fit to absorb this, but some of it will get in. You just give what's needed, don't give more. And give it in these stories, and it has to be told in the way that the Baal Shem Tov told it. Don't mess it up, don't mess around with it. Teach it exactly this way. And it'll get in, it'll revive the person. That's one thing. And that's dawn. It's no longer night, it's time to wake up. Then comes sunrise. Sunrise means now it's a new day. This is the second answer. It's a new day, meaning now is the time to prepare for the times of Mashiach. We don't want to have a sudden boom, all of a sudden the world is immersed in this sudden wisdom and so on. It has to happen as a gradual change. We don't want to be shocked. It has to be a positive way, in a good way. We have to be redeemed barachmim, with compassion. And compassion means there's a preparation for it. That's why Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, has to come first to prepare the people for this. And many say, well, he did come and he taught the Baal Shem Tov and he taught his students, and that's where these teachings come from. This is Eliyahu Hanavi, Gilui Eliyahu coming into the world. It's even before, starting from the times of the Ramban. Already this began. So this is all a preparation. But it's a preparation for what? It's a preparation for a time when the entire world will be immersed in this knowledge of God. Immersed meaning that becomes what the world is. To the full capacity of the human being, meaning every faculty of the human being will be immersed in this wisdom. So the preparation has to be according to what we're preparing for, right? We're preparing for full immersion. We have to have full immersion. Full immersion doesn't mean droplets. Full immersion means that you have to have full comprehension. Every faculty of the mind has to be engaged. So there has to be a kind of teaching of this inner wisdom that engages not just your comprehension, but your critical understanding, your application, your creativity, evaluation, the whole of Bloom's taxonomy. Everything, the whole person has to be involved. Every faculty of the human being has to be involved in understanding this and getting it. It's not good enough to say, yeah, I learned it, I read it through, I can repeat it over for you. No, explain it to me in your own words. Not just explain it to me in your own words, tell me how it applies in your life. Provide for me metaphor. Now you have to be careful with the metaphor. There's a certain set of metaphor that the Alter Rebbe received from the Maggid, that he received from the Baal Shem Tov, and they refer always, generally, to the human psyche. From my own flesh I see God. We use metaphor from the human psyche to understand godliness. That's very, very valuable, because that avoids the whole problem of taking the shell, eating the shell and throwing away the fruit. Because here, the shell itself is fruit. Understanding human psychology is something where you know when you get it that you don't really get it. You feel when you're talking about what is intellect, what are emotions, that no matter how much you talk about it, you don't really get it. And the more you talk about it, the more you understand that you don't get it. And yet you experience these things. And through that experience, you're saying, through that experience of my own emotions, my own intellect, my own desires, my own words, my own thoughts, how that dynamic works. I'm understanding, I'm not understanding, I'm experiencing what is the divine light, what is the infinite light, how the world is created, the relationship of my soul with God. We're understanding all these through human experience. You have to stick very closely to the way it is taught, understand that deeply, but at the same time expand upon it and meditate, contemplate this as much as you can so that you can explain it to others. It's, by the way, that's one way to facilitate contemplation is to imagine how I would be explaining this to somebody else. So you take something that you've learned it very well, you've thought about it a lot, you've made your notes on it, and now you imagine you're giving a class on it and explaining it to people, and they're asking questions, and you're answering those questions. You can think about a subject for a long time. Visualize it, you feel it, you experience it. That is what the Alter Rebbe was doing. That is Hasidus Chabad, full immersion of the human mind into the inner wisdom of the Torah in a way that the entire person is engaged in it. And that's there as a preparation for the times of Mashiach. And as for learning Zohar and learning the Tzvi Arizal, the writings of the Ari and so on, direct from the source, without that help, no, you can't do that. That's still not permitted. That's still not permitted. The same restrictions still apply. You need this guidance that is given, because only in this way is it made accessible to you, and are you going to be able to absorb it. Okay, so now we understand why there were two crises over here. One on the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov, and an accusation against that. And again, a second time on the Alter Rebbe. The first time was why? What are you spraying the crown jewel over the prince's mouth, and it's flowing everywhere? Well, we need to save his life. That's how you save his life. Okay, fine. Use a little dropper, get some of it in. But now comes another accusation. The Alter Rebbe is not just using a dropper, he's using a whole river. He's flooding the world with this. They're flooding the entire mind with it. Oh, a whole new accusation. And he asks, should I continue? And he's told by his teachers, by the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, you got to go even further with this, because you are preparing the world for the times of Mashiach. And this is the only way that it can happen, in a way of rachamim, in a way of compassion, in a good way, in a positive way. So those who are teaching this wisdom in that way are preparing the world for a nice, beautiful flow into the times of Mashiach. Should happen very, very soon. And that's the lesson that we get from all of this, is that there's no excuse today. Even if you feel, I don't need this stuff, I can live without it, I can be a perfectly good Jew without it, which is very hard today, but maybe there are people, okay. But there's no excuse. Since you have to learn the entire Torah, and this is part of Torah, and now it's been made accessible to you, you have to learn it. As the Rebbe said and says several times, that your soul came back many times to this world in order to learn the entire Torah. This is part of the Torah that it never learned. Why? Because it was only revealed in later generations. So for sure, this part you have to learn. And in this, we're preparing the entire world for Mashiach, like the Baal Shem Tov wrote in this famous letter to his brother-in-law, that when he ascended to the chamber of the Mashiach and he asked him, so no, when are you coming already? The Mashiach answered him, when your teachings, when your well springs will be spread to the outside. And that should be really, really soon, so we can experience a world that is filled with the knowledge of God, like the ocean waters cover the ocean bed. Don't go away yet, because there's some questions here. Yeah, somebody asked what's the second answer, so that's our answer. What's the second answer? The second answer is we need this for the times of Mashiach. Seems the holy teachings of advanced spiritual knowledge is good and right in our time for two reasons. Have massive weapons, okay. Mean the maturity to deal with deadly power and pollution, okay. The world's in a much more volatile state. In other words, was never in such a state, so volatile. That's also true. I would add to that now, with the world of global economy, we have to deal with spreading these teachings through Asia, India, China, and so on. And we have a common language here, also with the Arabic world, a common language. The inner secrets of Torah are actually a common language for all people. When the Rebbe was asked, if a non-Jew wants to learn Torah, what should I learn with him? The Rebbe answered, start with Shar Yichud V'Amunah, the second book of Tanya, which teaches about the creation of the world, continuous creation, and God is Hashgacha Pratis, how God is found within everything and beyond everything. So and then this question goes on, or comment goes on, our collective and spiritual and scientific knowledge has reached a point in which we are not growing enough. Billions of people are overtaken by running in circles of saturated ego because good teaching has been supplanted by advertising similar competitive ego, rat racing mentality. Okay, yeah, that's all part of the first reason. For health reasons, for medicinal purposes, we need to spread these teachings. But for that, you just need the fine dropper. To prepare the world for Mashiach, we need total immersion. And total immersion is what we're trying to provide with translating Hasidus Chabad into English. And listen, keep sending those questions in that comment box at the bottom, or in comments to the article itself at Chabad.org. And you can also go online to jnet.org/chai, CHAI, jnet.org/chai, and you can answer those questions. You get into a raffle. There are prizes, likes prizes, and wish everybody to be signed and sealed in the good book of life for the coming year. It should be a year where the world is filled with the wisdom of God, as the waters cover the ocean bed of Mashiach sooner than we can imagine. Thanks, everybody. Have a good year.